Okay, we're back. All right, I know that wasn't five. But it was five-ish. It was 5 Microsoft minutes.
Five Microsoft
Okay.
minutes. Should we reward people with the announcement first, or because they've been patiently waiting there?
That's okay. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Okay. So we got Sahil here. So
Such
Sahil,
a
good
tease.
morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm getting a bunch of grief from people, but that's just a normal day for me. So I'm used to it now.
He's used to it, yeah.
Yeah. And so Sahil, you've been on the show. You've been on the show before, but as a quick refresher, could you tell the people what they do, or what you do?
Uh, yeah, I'd be in a tough position if I tell people what they do, right? So I work as a I work as a program manager on the identity team at Microsoft, and here we help unblock important customers on Microsoft on identity problems, and also try to see how we can improve our product with a special focus on developers. But the boundaries are blurry between developers and IT pros these days anyway. So
Sure.
Sounds exciting.
Okay. Cool. So what are you going to show us today? So we're starting this new segment. We're gonna have you or someone from your team come on once every few weeks and just sort of give us the lay of the land of new sort of issues and things that developers are hitting. Correct?
Yep.
yeah, so let me start by asking you a question. How many Azure subscriptions do you have or have
Oh
access to?
God, too
A few,
many.
right?
At
Yeah.
least 85. Yeah.
How many Azure tenants do you have access to in whatever capacity?
A dozen probably, maybe
Yeah.
more.
Maybe 7.
And
Yeah.
have you ever heard anybody say, hey, I want to automate a long running process, but I need to use delegated permissions? Like I need the user identity to do that. Maybe application permission doesn't exist, or the admin won't give me the permissions, or something of those lines. Do you ever run into that?
Oh yeah, we did that with the Teams presence lights that we had to build. I ended up
Yeah.
building an MSAL token cache extension, and it was a huge pain.
Yeah.
That was fun. We did on the stream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's those problems. I'm going to solve them in the next 5 minutes.
In
Okay.
5 minutes. Check
In
that
the
out.
next 5 minutes.
That's a challenge. I love
It's a
it.
challenge.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm here for this.
So, we had last time we did a show on Azure CLI, and this sort of thing of like another trick around that, but specific to these things that I talked about. So I'm in a folder here called CLI, and I have set this up. So basically, I've got two folders in here: one called Microsoft, one called vStudio. And this is just as an example that I have a Visual Studio subscription through which I get the $150 Azure credits. And
Hmm.
sometimes I do a lot of work in that because that Azure AD I have full control on. And then I also get an Azure subscription through Microsoft. And that subscription, uh, it's in the Microsoft tenant. So while I get a lot more Azure credits on it, I don't get full control on the Microsoft Azure AD tenant. Reality is, on my day-to-day job, I have to switch between these tenants, and sometimes I have to switch between, the same login ID, same organizational account, but maybe different tenants. And it's just a hassle because typically what you have to do is that you do something like AZ login or AZ login, and then you have to pick what subscription you want to work in, if because you log in with an account and then you may have access to many tenants, so you have to say, oh well, switch to this tenant and this subscription. And the way to do that is just specify this weird GUIDs and all that. It just really slows me down. So here is a really easy way to get around that problem. So if I do something like AZ account show over here, it says, looks like no subscription found. That's because I'm not logged into Azure CLI right now, right? So if I did AZ login and then I was able to do AZ account show, then it'll actually show me a subscription. But here's the thing. I'm going to go into this Microsoft folder and look what just happened. It did something, right? Okay, here's what it did. I am using something called as dir-env. And dir-env you can install using Homebrew or with the curl command. It's a standard package on dir-env.net. What it allows you to do is it allows you to create your environment variables for that folder and just that folder.
Ooh. So if I'm
Yeah,
working on a, say on a .NET or a Node app, then I can have div env there,
yeah.
and it allows me to, what's next?
So I created a file here called .nvrc.
Hmm.
And what I'm saying here is that as soon as I enter this folder, go ahead and set up this environment variable.
Okay.
And this environment variable is used by Azure CLI. So what Azure CLI does is that when I log in, it will go to Azure AD and it'll get your usual access token, refresh token. But the next time I log in Azure CLI, it will leverage that refresh token and it'll get an access token for me automatically. So I don't need to go through a re-login process. So I have a folder, in this folder I've already logged in. So here if I do AZ account show, it knows that I'm logged in. And it's logged into a specific tenant.
Okay.
Now, if I go,
You've already signed in and you created a token in that
yes,
directory, right? Yes.
yep.
Okay.
But if I go to a different folder, the environment variable is now overridden, okay? And now if I do AZ account show, guess what? I'm still signed in, but now I'm automatically signed in to a different Azure subscription and a different
Nice.
tenant. Yeah, so there's no credential. I don't have to log in. I don't have to select a subscription. And guess what? I can set this up in a container and then I can run unattended tasks. So for example, if I was to do, let's call Microsoft Graph, right? az-rs URL. So let's pick up any command that graph or microsoft.com slash was v1.0/users, right? So this is going to, or let's say slash me, right? So that would be like user permission. And I'm going to hit enter. And that displays my details from this subscription. But if I was to jump into the Microsoft folder, now I'm connected to the Microsoft tenant and I do the same call over here. And now we're communicating to a different tenant. You see that the data has now changed.
We
Did
lost your
you
screen.
minimize
Sahil.
your terminal?
What's that?
We lost your screen.
Yeah.
Oh, dang it.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, your browser died? Your browser window?
No,
OBS
browser
Ninja?
is here. It's just acting weird. Let me reshare.
Sure.
Select screen to share. Hopefully it'll share the right screen. Do you see terminal again?
We do. Now you're
Okay,
back.
Yes.
cool. So yeah, I don't know at what point did we lose the screen, but basically, that just by switching between folders and I'm executing the same command between different folders, as you see, right? It's getting me different data because just by switching terminals, I was able to, connect to a different Azure subscription. Looks like the screen is lost again, is it?
No, we still got it. We're good.
No, we
Okay,
got it.
cool. Okay. Yeah. So the value over here is that, typically when we work with multiple Azure subscriptions, multiple tenants, it just makes my life a whole lot easier because it's going to that folder and I know for sure that I'm working in a particular Azure subscription. And like maybe I want to temporarily get a session, say using a service principal, or
Do
maybe
you have
using a
a
managed identity.
Do you have a link to their event or where people can go and download it and get set up?
Yeah, it's derenv.net. And last night I published a blog post that
I
talks
saw
about
that.
what I'm talking about here. So, yeah.
I saw that. That was a very good blog post. So make sure
So
you.
So by setting up dir-env, once I've got that set up, then it's just a matter of essentially overriding a specific value, and then I sign in so they get written to that place, or
That's it.
okay.
So see, what I'm doing over here is that I have specified that this Azure config dir will be this, right? So
Right.
if I was to do echo $Azure config dir, that's the value. And this value is set up automatically as soon as I enter this folder. And what this does is that it creates a folder called tokens at this path. That's the path I'm on. So I choose to put it in the same folder just to keep it clean. But when I go in here, guess what? I have that access token for that session in this folder.
That's
So it
awesome.
doesn't interfere with the rest of my environment.
Right, right, right.
Very nice.
No, that's awesome. So,
Yes.
okay, so I hate to have to ask, but is there a Windows version?
Darren will work on Windows as well. Yes.
Oh, very cool. So I could do this Linux, Windows, Mac, doesn't really matter.
Cross-platform, baby.
Oh, that's awesome. No, this is super cool. Like, I guarantee I'm going to start using this because, I mean, it's just, we even talk about it a lot on here. Like, that's part of what's been cool about using Azure Arc is I've got a service principal that's local that I can use, a managed identity that's local, that is extremely scoped in what it can do. Because, yeah, I'm a member of multiple tenants and lots of subscriptions. Half of the subscriptions, I don't even know how I ended up with access to them. Not to mention, doing consulting before I came to Microsoft, I've got access to dozens of customer tenants because
Oh
they
yeah,
never take us out, you know.
they
Yeah.
never
So
take us out. Yeah.
yeah,
So
no, this
here
is
is the
awesome.
weirdest thing. I'm in subscriptions that I have access to, but they've disabled my account. So I cannot remove myself from their tenant anymore.
Oh, because you can't sign in.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's another big thing too. Is if you are a member of organizations and you still can sign in, you want to be out of them.
Yeah.
MyApps.Microsoft.com. That's the place to go. I learned that a few years ago, and it was a life changer because I was able to leave dozens of organizations that I had no business being members of because I hadn't
Yeah.
worked with those customers or whatever in so long. So no,
That's
that's
perfect.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
And
there are still like some customers that I have like full admin rights to their tenant, even though I haven't worked there for years now. And
yeah,
and sometimes
Yeah.
it's like create a resource group. It's like, oh crap, I created in the wrong
Yep.
Azure subscription. So I'm glad I didn't provision a virtual machine or something, right? Or delete something. So yeah,
Well,
this keeps me safe.
when we've been working with like when we were writing Thrasman before, the whole point of it was to auto expire and delete resources, and that was my biggest fear was, am I going to go scan the wrong resource or scan the wrong subscription, write a bunch of tags, and then go back and delete them? And that's why it was
Yeah.
like, well, I'll just have to use a service principal locally because at least then, um, at least then I know it's only got access to the subscription without any question. Like if I can't do it confidently, even if maybe it's set up correctly, I think having the confidence that it is set up correctly is really what's
Yeah.
is that's what's most important.
Yeah.
perfect.
Yep.
Awesome.
So that's what I had.
Sahil, that's amazing. I put the link to the blog post in the chat, and I've also put I think JP has already added the link to dirp and .net. If people have questions, they can always reach out to us, and we can help them out. But thanks for coming, my friends.
Awesome. Thanks. So I'll go on the chat side and harass you guys from there now.
Hey, so one more question before you go. One more question before you go. If if customers or users if they need to if they need help, right? How do they like? What's the best way to get engaged with you and your team? Is it to come through us, or is there like is it Stack Overflow? Like, what's the best way for people to get help when they need it?
Yeah, great question. So we monitor all these channels that you mentioned, Stack Overflow, GitHub. If you post a question there, our team will look at it. But yes, for the audience that is watching you, they're welcome to reach out to you, Christos and JP, and then you know where to find me. So
Oh yeah, we do. Happy to escalate when we can answer questions. So we have a direct link to your team, and we've done it a few times as well. So if people can get hold of you, they can find us.
wonderful, and we value that. Thank you.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna get. So thank you, Sahil.
Over
We'll
to you
see
guys.
you we'll see you in a few weeks.
Yes.
We've got Damien, the star of the show. We've got Damien
Switching
here.
gears. Yeah.
So we're gonna switch over to Damien here for just a minute. We're gonna get Damien up on the screen, and Damien's gonna talk to us a lot about tokens. So, Damien, good morning. Introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for inviting me on the show. I'm delighted. So, I'm Damien Bowden. I'm living in Switzerland, and I do an awful lot of application consulting, security consulting, and stuff like that. So, I just love doing .NET Core, ASP.NET Core, security. Anything with security is great. Azure AD is what I've started doing like for the last couple of years now. And yeah, I think security is so exciting. I just love learning more and trying out more stuff. So
That's awesome.
Great chance to get on the show.
Yeah, no, we're super excited to have you here. I mean, I've seen your blog posts and your repos for a long time before.
You are a machine, my friend. I mean, you're
Yeah.
pumping out those blogs faster than we can read them. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think I can't count how many times I've ended up on your blog when I've reached a corner and I have no way to get out. So we're super excited to have you here.
Yes, I'll put a link to your blog post here, and for people that are watching the YouTube video rather than the live stream, there'll be links just below within the description, so people can reach out to Damien and ask questions or read his blog. So, thanks again for coming to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's great.
What do you have for us today?
Yeah, so what I thought is I didn't want to prepare a presentation. I want to take it a bit ad hoc maybe. And the idea is if people have questions or whatever, they can ask me. And then I have a few topics I want to go through. Can you share my screen maybe?
Yeah, let's get your screen up here.
And then the idea is that I'll go through the topics and explain a bit about access tokens, what type of tokens there is. And then maybe after that, then I'll go and explain how you get the tokens, because that explains if you know how you're going to get your tokens, there are different type of access tokens, and then I can explain the difference between the access tokens. That's what I was thinking. Like so.
Yeah.
And then after
perfect.
that, then maybe I was thinking I'll do some demos as well. I've got a lot of demos to show, and then maybe the difference between public access tokens and private access tokens. The 8ZP ACR claim, why that's so important. It's good to know that. And then the 8ZP claim for client validation is really important, I think. It's the Microsoft way of doing constrained tokens to app registrations. There's new specifications for that now, where you can use the CFN claim from access tokens. But Microsoft have this 8ZP claim in the version 2 tokens, which is great. Then token decryption, token lifespans. I was actually surprised. I didn't realize most ID identity providers is very simple to set the lifespan of a token. And in Azure AD, it's actually a bit hidden. It takes a while to figure it out. But it works. It's good. With V2 tokens as well.
Once you get there, it works, right?
Yeah.
Genau. Exactly. I'm speaking German now. So and then some authorization stuff at the end, but we're not going to get to that, I'd say. So it doesn't matter if I get through all the stuff. It's just get as far as we want. No rush, like so.
Let's get cracking.
So what I thought is the first thing I thought to discuss is what type of tokens do you have. So it's really important when you use any identity server systems, or you want to use a client, usually it does all the work for you, but you still need to know what you're doing. And all the modern systems that we use nowadays, most of them anyway, use OAuth and OpenID Connect. So there's certain type of tokens they use in certain flows, which you should know which tokens you're using and what you use it for. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people using the wrong token for the wrong thing, and then they complain it doesn't work, or they make a hack that it works, and then they switch and then have problems. So an ID token came along with the OpenID Connect. And an ID token is a JWT token, and this is only for the client. So if I'm doing a user interaction flow like a native client, or a desktop application, or web application, or SPA application, you'll always get an ID token back. And in this ID token is all the stuff you need to do the authorization, or maybe nothing, and then you can use the user endpoint, which will give you the information which you can do your authorization of your application, or if it's an SPA application, it would just be usability, because anything in the SPA application is not secure, it's in the public, but it's good for usability.
Yes.
So ID tokens are just for the clients and never ever for APIs or backends. Yeah, so that's really important. You never try and send the ID token to the backend. So people do that, I notice. They choose the wrong token and they send the wrong one to the wrong API point. So this is what you use, and you open this up in your client. If you're doing SPAs, you usually would take this token, take the claims apart, and set up your application, what you need from it. Or you can use the user endpoint as well. A lot of the libraries which you can use will also actually make this possible, so you don't need to come into contact with this maybe. Then access tokens, this is really important. There's two types of access tokens. There's self-contained access tokens, and then there's reference access tokens. And in Azure security systems, you only have the self-contained access tokens. So what's the difference? So access tokens it has everything in it. It's in the form from a JWT token. and it has all the information in it that when you send this to your backends, your APIs, that the API itself then can do the validation and do the authorization checks what it needs, and then it will give you the data back of 401 or 403, depending if the token's okay. So it has everything in it. You don't need to do any more calls or round trips. And the problem with access tokens is that if I'm in, for example, a single page application, and I send my application tokens out to the browser and it's been shared by everyone, the problem with access tokens is that once I log out, the access tokens are still valid. So I can use these access tokens even after I close the session, or if someone was to find this in the history logs, or you sent out a signal error request and it's somewhere in the URL, I can use this access token that I gave to you, and then I can do whatever you could do with the access token. So what you want to do is, on a good security system, you can, when you log out, you want to kill all the sessions. So if you use reference tokens, this is a great way of doing it. And what you do is on a reference token is, the advantage here is you have a reference token, it's the only token that goes to the public zone, to the internet, the single page application, whatever. And then when I send that to the API, it uses a thing called introspection to ask the STS server or the IDP if this reference token is okay. If it's okay, then you get the data back and you get everything you need. But if it's not okay, when you click a logout, I can say inactivate all the reference tokens, and then that reference tokens that I stole from you or still have after the logout is no use anymore. So this works really good, and a reference token has no format. You should never open up the access tokens anyway. And with this then, it's a massive improvement to improving your single page applications. Now, this is not possible in Azure AD at the moment, but I think it's something you should need to know, that if you're doing single page applications, you want to try and improve the access tokens or the reference tokens you use in the front end. So maybe at some time in the future, this will be introduced to Azure AD. But if you can't do this, then you can reduce the lifespan of the tokens and whatever. But for the moment, Azure AD just has access tokens, ID tokens, and then comes the third one they have is the refresh tokens. So refresh tokens are, it's called offline access. It's the scope you need to get a refresh token back. And in the up to last year, we only used refresh tokens in trusted backends or rendered applications or trusted backend applications. But now we have the problems with single page applications where you can't use same site anymore, or you can't use the iframes over cross domains because the Safari and the Brave browser are already blocking it. And some of the other browsers are going to start blocking the iframe refresh mechanisms. So what will happen now is that you have to use refresh tokens to get your new sessions, but refresh tokens in a single page application is a bit dodgy, a bit dangerous. Now there is mitigations or ways of improving this and reducing the security risk of using refresh tokens. But the problem is, once I have a refresh token in a browser or I get hold of it, I can stay logged in with the refresh token for as long as I want. So it's like offline access. So you really don't want to lose your refresh tokens. That's really important. They're the 3 tokens that matters in Azure AD at the moment. There's other tokens that come into OR 2.1, and there's backchannel logouts tokens and stuff like that, but they're not part of the Azure AD stuff at the moment. So that's the tokens. Is there any questions before I go any further? Or?
No, so far so good.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so
we're good.
Excellent. So then the next thing is how do I choose, or what's the difference between the access tokens? So one of the main differences between access tokens is how you get the access tokens. So if I'm a daemon application or a trusted application, then I'd be using an application access, which is client credentials code flow, which would be using the Microsoft Identity.Client in .NET Core. And this can get an application access to a service. So in Azure AD, what I do is I create a new app registration, and then I do access as application. And with that, then I get my application tokens back when I have a secret. And the whole thing is that you have to have a secret or a certificate to get this access token. So this is for trusted applications. There's no user involved. And it's important that you should only use this from a trusted application. You should never use this somewhere publicly, or you don't want to give out your application rights in the public internet, or you want to keep this secure or keep it hidden, use a secret. So how does this work? Do I have one here? Access token stuff. It's actually really simple. I'll just have a picture here. Hopefully, can you see that now?
Almost.
Should be
Just a
coming
white
up.
screen. Oh, there they are.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a really simple flow. This is OAuth. There's no OpenID Connect here. It's just pure OAuth. So what I do is I send a token request with a secret or a certificate, and then I ask the Azure AD, can I have a token for this secret as a certificate? And Azure AD says, yeah, you're grand, and they give me the token back. It's a self-contained access token, and in it has a scope as access as application. And then I can send this to my resource server, which could be GraphRP, it could be my Azure AD app registration. Any resource that supports this actually in Azure, or I can make my own applications over an app registration, and then I get the data back. So it's really simple, no user, and you see the client has to know a secret.
Yeah.
So this is why you don't really want to be using this flow for console applications. Or console applications, if possible, you should use a delegated access flow where you can make the login, user login up through a browser, whatever. So yeah. This is daemon applications, backend to backend, and so on. So I try to avoid using this one as much as possible, but sometimes you need it. Then the next three flows are user interaction flows. So this is OpenID Connect with ID tokens. And there's three flows you need to know, or three best practice recommended at the moment. So one is the OIDC, the OpenID Connect public flows. This is an OpenID Connect code flow with Pixie, and that's the proof key for code exchange. I won't explain that yet, I won't come to it later maybe. And there's three types of applications really use this. There's single page applications, native applications like desktop applications, or mobile applications, mobile phone. And they should all use this flow if possible. So the big thing here is this is it has no secret. You cannot trust the application. So what it does is it pops up, opens a browser, and then you can log in using the browser. The second flow, which is important, is the OpenID Connect code flow with Pixie, or the hybrid flow, and that's for trusted applications. Now, if you're using Microsoft Identity.web, they actually don't implement this. They use just the OpenID Connect code flow without the Pixie, and this is a bit of a problem because this is a bit open. So it's an attack called the code substitution attack, which really they recommend that you should protect against that. Now that's where you swap my code that I got from my flow with your code, and then I can substitute the code out and I get your access token, and then I can do whatever you were meant to do. So I type of robbed or hijacked your identity. Yeah. So if you use Pixie with the trusted backends, this cannot happen. But in Microsoft Identity Web, they have disabled the Pixie at the moment because they have a problem with MSAL. So eventually there's an issue open for this and they'll fix it, but it's coming. If you really want to use Pixie from now, what you could do is you could just implement the OpenID Connect client direct in your ASP.NET Core application, and then you can set the Pixie to true because Azure AD does support this at the moment. Another thing you could do is use the OpenID Connect hybrid flow, because when it sends back the code and the ID token in the second step, there's a thing called the C hash in the response, and this protects against this type of attack as well. So either of the two flows is what's recommended, but if you're using the Microsoft Identity.web, you'll be using the OpenID Connect code flow alone. And then the third flow, which is important for user interaction, is the OAuth device flow. And this is super, I think, because if you have a TV, or you have a PlayStation, Xbox, a machine computer, you don't have a good way of inputting your data. You don't have a proper tastature, and you don't want to use your strong passwords. You want to use your FIDO2 authentication. So what you do is that with this flow, then you can start the authorization, and then it will come back to the screen with a barcode or whatever. And with that, then you can log in on your mobile device, use FIDO2 authentication, second factor, and then you come back, and then you can finish off the flow on your TV, and then you're securely logged in, whatever you need. So there are three types of flows you need for user interactions. I'll just show them in diagrams, maybe it makes it a bit more simple. So, just show you how this one works if it opens. Computers make it slow today.
Well, of course, the big thing too with the difference between applications and users, right, is application permissions tend to be significantly more privileged because you don't have a user context. Like, we're not limiting.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're not limiting the API data to just my data. It's everybody's data because there is no my in that case, right?
Yeah. So you really don't want to be using it publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is how the Microsoft Identity Web client implements the authorization code flow at the moment. So it's actually pretty simple. the first request you send off your authorized request, and you have all the parameters in the query string. There's a new OR21 par coming up soon, which you do it differently now. But at the moment, you send all the information in the query string, and then if everything's good and valid, what you can do is you can log in, you do your authorization, you do your two-factor authentication, then you give your consent, and then in step 3, it goes back in the front channel to your browser with the code. So if you're using a trusted backend application, then the backend then will send the token request with the secret, and the application plus the code will be authenticated and validated. And then if it's all okay, you get all your tokens back. And if you request the offline access token, then you'll get the refresh token back, and you get your ID token, and then you can put all your data into the ID token, or you can use the user info endpoint, and then you get all the data back in the user info point, and then you can do whatever you need. So it's just a two-step flow, and you can use the strong validation. The main thing is that the secure token service is in a browser. So this flow, if you're using Pixie, will work for trusted or non-trusted applications. So my browser app could be a mobile phone, and then this first step doesn't actually redirect, it just opens up a browser, and then it redirects to my secure token server. Or if I'm using a desktop application, it opens up a browser, and it redirects then to the STS, you do your authentication, you do your two-factor, whatever, your FIDO all again, and then it comes back to the redirect from the browser, and that connects back into your application, and then you can complete the steps in the back end. So that's pretty much every user interaction flow almost now. They all use this with Pixie now.
And the big key here is that tokens never touch the browser, right? The tokens here, the tokens are delivered to the backend because the backend's making a side channel call on its own. So the only thing that ever touches the browser is the authorization code itself, which generally have extremely short lifetimes and can't be redeemed without a code or without a secret anyway.
Exactly, and that's what's great and what's cool is that the refresh token that comes back here is also in the back end, and with that then it's not possible to it's not easy to rob the refresh token because it's between your trusted backend and your trusted Azure AD provider.
Right.
Which is great.
So we did get one question. So Bolt asks, how can people easily tell if you're using Pixie without hunting, without going through the code?
Oh, that's pretty simple. So in single page applications, what you could do is that when you do redirect in the browser, you'll see the code challenge in your URL parameters. Or if you're debugging in the ASP.NET Core, you'll see that when you send the authorization request, you can turn on your P2 login, and then you can see that the Pixie sends a code challenge in the first request, the authorized request, and the second request then it sends the code itself. And then what Pixie does is in the first request, you make some random string, and then you hash it, and it's one-way hash. And then when I send that in the first request, it's impossible to find out what the original value was. And then when I request the code and I send the original value, and then the secure token provider or the ID provider checks that both are the same with using the same hashing algorithm, and then everything's okay. So it's impossible to hijack the application that made the first request must make the second request. That's almost impossible. It's because it's one-way encryption. So in a single-page application, it's really easy to see it. In a backend, you have to actually go into the code. With the Auth 2.1, there's a new specification called PAR, and with that, you will not be able to see the authorization request. You'll have to actually send it then, so it'll be a bit more difficult then, but it's more secure. Is that good, Bolt? Is that answered for him or? Bolt one, great. Is it?
Bolt __
Bolt.
IO. He's asked that I be more. He's asked that I be more explicit in his full name. His full Christian name is Bolt __
Bolt __ Yeah.
So. Sahil asks also if Pixie supports token binding, and I didn't think token binding ever made it out of spec because I thought Google or somebody complained about it. Did they not?
Yeah, exactly. The new specs are working on different things. They're not doing token binding, but Pixie has really nothing to do with it. But actually, I can't really answer that because I'd have to find out how far token binding is going, and then I'd be able to say if Pixie supports it. But most of the new specs use Pixie per default now anyway. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest, what the answer is that. Maybe you know that. So I'll get back to you on that one, Sahil, and I'll find out. So the next flow I want to go on about is the device flow, and this is pretty simple. It's all it does is if you have a device with no user input, you'll always have a touch screen, or you can start the console, start the flow, or some easy way of doing a simple input. So I took this from the specification itself, the RFC, and what it does is on the first request, then it says this client would like to log in. So what happens is the STS, or the identity provider, then sends back the response. Here's your user code and here's your URL, and then you can display this as a barcode, or you can display the code, and then it will start polling the STS server and saying, is the person logged in yet? Is the person logged in yet? And it'll keep polling until you have the timeout expires. Then in the meantime, you come with your mobile phone, or you can use your laptop, and what you can do then is that you can scan the QR code, or you can just give in the URL yourself direct, and then you get redirected to the secure token provider. You can log in again, do your two-factor authentication, use your password manager with your 50-character code, and then when everything's okay, you give your consent, and then it comes back to your mobile application, your browser, and says you're logged in. And then the next time the device polls the server, the server will give back the access token and a refresh token if you wanted. And that's it. It's really simple. So I have a demo of that. I'll show how it works after as well in code. And what's really good about this, you can use OpenID Connect on top of this. I use OpenID Connect code flow with this as well, and with Pixie on top. And then you can build that on top of the OAuth flow, so you can use the two of them together. Like, so it's a user interaction flow. And with this, then it's really great for machine computers. If you're working in a machine factory, or you're doing TV programming, or you're doing mobile devices, which no mobile device you have a good access, but anything that has no good user input, this works really well.
I was at a Marriott, and Marriott was like, they had a big partnership with Netflix. So like, we're gonna put Netflix in every hotel room. So
Cool.
So I get upstairs, and I go to type in I go to sign into Netflix, and there's no code flow. So I have to type in my like 97 character. My phone screen's going to sleep. It's like, oh my god, this is awful. So I just watched it on my phone instead.
No, that's cool. So I'm just reading the comments there. Pixie is OAuth 2 spec 2.1. Everyone's using Pixie at the moment, and it's pretty much standard now. It's actually I think it's very few identity providers don't use Pixie at the moment. But I'm not sure if it belongs to the 2.1 specs, or because it's pretty much adopted now at the moment.
Well, it's in 7636. I think it's an extension to 2.0. I don't think it's purely a part of 2.1.
Yeah.
I think it's an extension to 2.0. So Pixie, yeah, because the Pixie spec first went in September 2015. So it's been available for a long time. I don't know when it was ratified, but it's been available in terms of what it should, what we thought it was going to be. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Yeah, no problem. So just there's three other type of flows I'd like to just talk about, and then I'll start doing code demos.
Mm-hmm.
So the next flow, which is really important, is the delegate access tokens, and I think this is pretty awesome. This is the on behalf of flow. And this is where you have a user interaction flow, and you want to use an API, and then the API wants to use a further API. So good security practice that you don't, if you have a SPA application and you have 5 APIs, you do not want to make all 5 APIs public. You'd like to make one public and the other 4 are hidden with and you have these a secret, or they're in a trusted zone, and you cannot access these APIs direct. So what you do is you have one dedicated API for your SPA application or whatever, and then you can access that with your access token, which was given to the user interaction flow. And then from there, you say, oh, but I want to access data from a different API. And then you can use the on behalf flow to access the other API. And what's cool is in Microsoft Web, Identity Web, this is all out of the box with the downstream APIs. It does this in the background for you. But what it does is it requests another token on behalf of you, your identity. That's the user plus the application. It creates a new identity, and then you get the new scope and new access token back for the other API, but it's for that user. So it's a delegated access flow. And what's really important with delegated access tokens is that you have to have a user secret. So you cannot use the on-behalf flow in the internet or the public zone or SPA applications. You can only use this where you have a trusted secret. So it will only work on your backends. And then I took this picture from the Microsoft Docs, so this is really good. I think it explains it really good. There's a great documentation on the Microsoft. I have the link there in the picture as well. I don't know if you can see it. But it's really simple that you come from your application, you logged in, it's a server-ended application or whatever you have, the user interaction, and you've got your access token for your front API. What you do is I'd like to access some data, and the web API then knows that you actually want to get that from a different resource, a different web API. So what it does then, it says, can you give me another token with this? And it gives the user secret and it gives the client ID for this and the scope. And then you get your new token for the other web API. Then it accesses the data in the web API 2, and then it comes back, and then you have the data again in the application. So the web API 2 has absolutely no interaction with the application of the internet or the client, and then all the stuff in between is protected, and then you have this flow where you can still use the user application, use delegated access further. So this is what I use an awful lot now. If I'm setting up some type of secure system, maybe you have big system, maybe you have 7 or 8 different applications, with different APIs and so on. I only want to have one public API for my UI application if possible, and then I can use this type of flow everywhere then, and then I keep the rest in a trusted backend and protect it maybe with a VNet or whatever. You can put a firewall up behind it if you want, and all the access then between the APIs is in my trusted protected zone, and everything else in the public internet then is there's only one API, one access token I have to protect, because every extra access token I send out to the internet is more to attack. So the less access tokens or the less stuff I have in the internet, the less people can rob from me. So I try to give as little as possible publicly. Then another type of flow which is important is the graph API. It's also a delegated access tokens or applications. So when you're using graph API, there's 2 type of flows every time you can use. This is either the resource owner credentials flow again to get the applications flow, or the second one is the delegated access again, which use delegates. And this is the exact same as downstream APIs are delegated on behalf of flow or client credentials flow, but it has its own interfaces, it has its own tokens, it has everything separate with Graph API. So you cannot use a Graph API token anywhere else except in Graph API, and you have to use their authentication provider, or if they want you to use it, you can still use your own, but there's the iToken acquisition client, which you can use that from the Microsoft Identity Web, or you can use that from the Graph API's factory client. So it's the exact same as Web API downstream APIs or API to API access, but it's different for Graph APIs again. I have a demo of that as well, I'll show you. And then the last way you're getting tokens I want to talk about is access tokens from where you have no scopes and no roles. So this is important for maybe if you're doing a single sign-on from your Windows and you get your access token from your Windows page, say, or whatever, and you're logged into Azure AD through your Azure Connect or whatever you have. And what happens here is that you still want to use that for your API, and then you can call your API with this, but this has no scopes, it has no roles in it, no groups. So normally this would be rejected by the validation, but what you can do is you can use the RTL, it's a Boolean value you can turn on. We'll say we don't need roles or scopes in my token, and then you do the whole authorization process using the Graph API then yourself in the back end. So it's how, if you don't want to request a new token with a separate flow or a separate app registration, you can use, there's another way of getting an access token, and this access token has less in it, but then you have to do all the authorization direct with Microsoft Graph yourself. So my plan is now I do some maybe code demos for all that.
Yes.
And then see if there's any questions or whatever.
Sure.
Cool. So first thing I'll do is the multiple access token. So I think I've got it running. So I don't see what you see, but you see my Visual Studio, I hope now, do you?
We do, yes. It's all working good.
Excellent. So what I have is I have a public-facing app. It's my appy with multiple appies. As you can't really read it, I assume. And then I have two different appies. One is a service appy, and that's for access tokens, for appy to appy. And the second is a user access token, maybe delegated access tokens.
JP, can you see the...
So,
sorry, give it a second, Damien. I think you're all pixelated there. Can you move your
Yeah,
window a little bit?
That seems okay now. I think
Oh,
it's
it
back.
is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think we're getting the same problem with, what's his name? Son last week. I wonder if every time you redraw the window something happens, but yeah, let's go back to that now. It seems to be good. Cool. I'll let you know if it breaks.
so
again.
are you good? Can I continue?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so what I'll do is here, for the user interaction flow, I've implemented a simple Angle application. And the Angle application uses just OpenID Connect and code flow with Pixie to get the access to the API. So what I do is I'll just start it up to show you, and then I'll show you the tokens. So see. So if I log in here, well, someone was asking me where you see the Pixie here. So you'd see it here in the browser URL if I missed the network traffic here. So that's one too late. I'll do a refresh. I have to say relog. Okay, so I'll go through the tokens first. So here I have the different access. I have in my front end, I can only use a user access token. And the way I do my architecture usually is I only have at the front end one single access token with as little as possible in it. But I have access to all the different access tokens through my back end using the different flows. So the direct API call, I use the access token that my Angular application gets itself. So if I look in the browser here, I should see the token that Azure issued me. So where's my tokens? There. So this is the stuff you see here at the bottom. You can't really read it, but I'll make it big now. I'll go here, it's easier. So can you read?
Yeah.
Be big enough now, hopefully.
Yep.
The access token that I got from what I did is this flow was the Angular application, a single page application, and it did the code flow with Pixie to Azure AD for a single tenant.
Right.
So what I got back was I got a JWT access token version 2. This is one of the first things I always do. When I set up an Azure app registration, I set it to version 2. So you can see here, if you're using a version 2, you'll always get it here. And then when I did my Azure app registration, this has been talked about a few times, so the documentation is great, so I won't go into detail here. But what I did is I would like to get an access token for this app registration. And then you see that I requested a scope access as user here. Mm-hmm. So you also see that this is great, I think here. In my token, Azure AD tells me that this token that I have here was created for this client. So when I send that to the APIs, I can validate that this client actually got the token. And then, this is also very important, this is a public client, no trust. There's 3 values here you have. Public client means there's no key, there's a secret, which is 1, and 2 is if I use a certificate. Be pity there, if I could do multi-factor, I'll take it, or you can't do it really slow. But you have 1, 2, or 3 here, 0, 1, 2, and then you can say, to use this access token on my API X, you have to at least have a secret, at least have a certificate to access my API. So that's pretty much it. There's from the front end. So when I send a request now, this token will work for the direct API. So this request here, make a direct API call. I send that to the server. I hopefully have my breakpoints set now. Oh, there's no breakpoints. I used exactly that token now in the API to get data from the backend. So you say this is just the data from direct API call. So if I go into here, I have 4 controllers to demonstrate this, and the direct API call does nothing else except it validates the policy and it gives the data back out. So you say, this validation of the policy is in my startup. So what does this do? So if you look here, I have I can show this first. In the services, I haven't explained this yet, but I just use the standard Microsoft Identity Web, and I use the standard configuration. I have a downstream API for the delegated access tokens, and then I have a Microsoft Graph configuration for user basic read all, and then I save that to cache. The validation access authorization policy, the only thing I do here is I validate the HZP claim has this value. That means that I will only accept tokens here which were made for my single page application and from no one else. So if I made a IT configuration problem and I allowed an on-done app registration to create tokens for my API, it will fail here in this validation because it's only my SBA application with this Azure app registration is allowed to access this user interface or this API. So this way I can validate the client sending it. Now I'm not actually validating the client. The only thing I can prove here is that the client was registered to the Azure app registration. So I'm validating that this client belongs to this Azure app registration. So if you look at this RD6B and I go to my Azure, do I have it open? I do. So there I have RDBC, and this is my SPA portal client. This is the one I implemented. So this matches. So I validate that this client is correct. So this is what I want actually. So only this single page application can use the API, and then what's behind it is different then. So the second call I could do is a delegated API call. So what happens here is that I call my API. The API calls the OBO flow and then gets API 2. So when I call the data here, I have a breakpoint set. I hope a breakpoint set. Oh yeah. So what I have here is I'm going to get the API data. So I called my controller and it sent through a services. I would like to get the data from the user API. This is the second one here. So what I did is using the token acquisition, you say get an access token for user, and this implements the on behalf of flow for these scopes. So you can see how you have a scope here exposed with the B2, and this is the app registration which I implemented for the user API. And you must have a secret to access this. So this API in the backend, the trusted backend, is not public for my Angular application. And the access token here will only work in my trusted zone of the applications that I allow. So if I open up this token now, see what's in it. So there's 3 parts of every token. It's the header, the body, the payload, and then the signature. So in the payload, you can go here and have a look now. It said p value is 1, which means I used the secret to get this token. So it's definitely not, if you just use that alone, the first token I used actually was no secret, and this required a secret to get access to this API, because I do not want the public client accessing the API. So when I set up the app registration, I says required a secret or required a certificate to use it. Here I required a secret, and you cannot access this API without giving it a secret that was set up in the Azure app registration. Then you see that the token was created for the 2B5 client, and that's actually my API client now. That's no longer my single page client. When I go back to my Azure, you can see that this client, this token was created for 2B. Where's 2B? There. The API with multiple APIs. So this is not my single page application, so this is the backend API now. So now I can validate that. It says I could say that the user API is a delegated user API, and I'll only allow this API to access it. So I have full control over which APIs I can allow to access my API. So just say I want to do my security architecture, I could block maybe 2 or 3, and if someone makes a misimplementation or tries to access from somewhere else, they would have to actively go activate that, and they'd have to know what to do. So It's another way of securing it. And you put this in a VNet and you secure it as well, and you put firewalls as well on top of it. But for me, is you have to do both. You protect the applications, plus you protect the network security as well.
So in OBO, we're taking the access token that we got from, so our Angular app requested an access token. We got that to talk to our API, right? Our first API 1, for lack of a better term. And the OBO flow takes that token that it received, API 1 received, which has only an audience of API 1. It takes that and uses that as an assertion, essentially, back to Azure AD to say, okay, I am API 1, I have this token from the user, and I need to now talk to API 2. So the second token that's received has the correct audience for API 2, correct?
Oh, my sound is gone.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. We can hear you.
So API 2, the token that gets issued via that OBO flow, that on behalf of flow, that token has the correct audience of API 2, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we want. So you can see that the audience is different here. Plus this value here. So it's I think it's pretty awesome, and it makes it really easy with the OBO flow, so easily to implement. You see the code implementation. There's an awful lot going on behind that, but I only had to implement pretty much that line.
Yeah, from a developer perspective, it's a lot more simplified. What happens behind the scenes is quite a lot.
Yeah. So this is awesome, I think so. And then, but I still think even though it's one line, you still need to know what's happening. And then it's much easier to say, oh, should I use an access token for user or an access token for service and so on. So let's just try the next one. We should get back to our Angular app, hopefully. So the next one I will do is an application call. So what this one is, I have some admin application. I want to check all users if they're using Fido2, or I want to check something else. So when I call the application here, this will actually access as application, which is something totally different now, and it's a different flow. So I'm calling with my user delegate access token to the backend, and then in the backend where the breakpoint is now, I just get access token for app here. That's readable, is it? Hopefully. So this is awesome because now I'm doing an admin task in my secure trusted backend. I do not allow this in the public zone, and this access token can get some admin data I need for my application to work, like just give me all users that are whatever, maybe some data, I don't know. But anything that's not allowed public is really admin type qualities. And then the access token I use here can be used to access my administration application. And this is all from trusted backend to trusted backend. And even though it looks very similar, this is get access token for API. This is an access as admin flow. So this is client credentials flow, and not the OBO flow. And before, even though it looked the same, we're calling it was a completely different flow. And this is also, you must have a secret. I trust this application here. And the token looks different as well. In this, I'll have an access as user here, as access as application access as application here. Getting confused down here.
It's tricky.
So,
well, and of course, the key thing here though is that now.
So if you see the token here.
Yep. So you get into a position where you so in your API, before you make this call, your authorization rules need to be airtight, because now you're not accessing, say, this downstream API as a user, you're accessing it as an app, which means there's nothing specific to that user, meaning anybody who can make it to that endpoint with a valid token would be able to call that method. So now you as the developer, it's on you to make sure that you've got the correct access checks and everything else that's happening in that method before you fire off that client credential call, because it's potentially, and in most cases, more highly privileged than what a user could do alone.
Exactly. So the fact is, you can use it in your backend trusted, but if I allow a delegate user access to access this, I have to be careful that only special admins or have a extra security or
Yep.
something around it, or maybe a separate application. What's
I mean,
cool is that
it's sort of like calling SQL, right? Like some people did SQL
Mm-hmm.
impersonation that usually ends poorly, and so for the most part, most apps that use SQL use some sort of a trusted account to talk to SQL, and then they filter the data. They'll query by user ID, or they will filter the data out before they return it back to the client. And that's essentially what's happening here. Is the identity that's going to talk to the other service is in this case a single shared identity for all users, as opposed to impersonating the user themselves, right? I don't know how much of that made it.
is that my connection breaking up or yours, JP?
I don't know.
I think it's.
I don't know.
Well,
You're a
JP
long-
is
you're-
not breaking up. Yeah.
You're a long way away from us, so that may be why. You're very like.
Yeah, it's snowing
in
here.
terms of distance, yeah. And then one more quick question. The code that you're showing us right here, that code is that's that top. I think that's the top hit on your GitHub, your main GitHub page, right? So we've had a couple folks ask for the code. So
Yeah, I'll send the link after. And it's just my connection's breaking up, so I don't want to do too much traffic.
okay, cool. Yeah,
Don't move, stay still.
Yeah.
We don't want too many pixels moving around the screen.
Yeah, but all the code I show you here, I've made a public MIT license. It's all public in the internet, and anyone can copy it, change it, do what they want with it. No, Baron is always slow. I don't think so, Mark. We're the fastest here. Yeah, so okay, so and the last flow here is graph app we call. But there's not actually much to see here because the graph we call is all hidden. What happens is we use the add Microsoft graph. I'll show you this, and it gets your graph data after this. So my computer's crazy slow. Oh,
It's
that's
okay.
why it's debug. Can't go further without a debug.
breakpoint.
Come on.
Why is it not working? Yeah, I've done it a few times, forgetting about breakpoints.
So I just want to show in the Graph API client. This is really simple now. All you have to do is add Microsoft Graph API. I use the beta endpoint most of the time. You can use the version 1 if you want.
Living dangerously, I like it.
You add the scopes here, which you want, and then all you need to do then in your service is then you inject the Graph client service client, and then you can request whatever you want. It's really simple to use. The hardest bit is to figure out what and where everything is in Graph API, but you can pretty much get almost anything through Graph API, and you can show your data then as well. And this is again a delegated token.
Why are you passing the on line 23? Why are you passing the scopes again? If your service client should already have the scopes, right?
I don't need to do that now. Because maybe in some other applications I use different scopes, and then it would request a new access token.
Yes, correct. Okay, just for clarifying, if people
Yeah.
see the code and they wonder why. Okay.
Okay. But if you're using this in a Blazor application, which is a single page application, you would have to request the scopes up front, and then you would have to remove this more or less. Then it's no longer optional.
Blazor has some kind of idiosyncrasies when it comes to acquiring tokens. I think we covered this before, both with Blazor Server and WASM. But it's nice to be reminded.
How diplomatic.
See, I am the master of the right words for that thing.
It's an amazing spin. I love it.
Maybe I should be in politics, you know?
White House press secretary. Here he comes. That'll be your next job.
You know, I would do an amazing job about the Space Force.
Okay, so maybe just show you another thing about the roles. I was talking a lot about the ACP claim and then the scope, and the other claim, the AZP AC1 claim. So what I do with my clients, if I'm creating a dedicated system where I'm building maybe 3 or 4 applications, I always try and control the application which is calling it, which means coming from the correct client. So What I do is then, this one I just added some roles. These are added to the app registrations. I'll maybe show them later. And then I validate the scope, this access as user. And then I validate the HZP, say which client is calling if possible. And then I validate that you use a secret for this application. This application here requires a secret to use it. And you see that I'm using a web API with roles here. And it's been used from a server rendered ASP.NET Core Razor page application. So this application here is using this one. And to log in, you have to have a secret. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
So that would mean that I
Then
couldn't call. So that would mean I couldn't call this. I couldn't call this API if I didn't have, if I didn't come from an application that was also capable of storing a secret, be it a backend web server or some other kind of secret, something else that can hold a secret. Essentially, no public clients, no mobile client, no, no single page app, anything like that.
Exactly, yeah. Because I don't want that. I want to prevent it if possible.
Right. Okay.
Well, I tried never to implement security in the front end if possible. Actually, I have an interesting graph I use. I have a picture of it actually. I can show you. If I'm deciding to implement a single page application, I have a type of flow where I can use if I'm from most secure to least secure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this? So the way it says, if I'm going to do a single page application, usually I try not to. And because if I want to do a security, I want to have everything in my trusted backend. So what I do is I use a backend for front end pattern, and I do the whole security in my backend application. And then the Angular, the Vue, or the React application would be more or less just a view for my backend. And then I would access that using cookies. Because cookies you can protect with same site, and cookies you can prevent JavaScript from reading, and then you can add the anti-forgery cookies to it, and then you can add the same site, and you can add cause protection. So the whole security, what I have, is done in the back end, and then nothing's exposed to JavaScript parts, but I can still use the JavaScript. So I think this is the most secure and the best ways, and I don't have to share or store my tokens in the browser. So this works really well. But the problem with it is, if you have high performance applications, you want to have you use tokens, or you have an API in a different domain, this will not work because you have to fix this the same domain. So what I do then is then you use OpenID Connect code flow with Pixie, and then it's not near as secure as the cookies because you have to store the tokens in the local storage or the session storage. And some IDPs you cannot use that, you have to use implicit flow, which is the worst of the three, but I still use it if you have no other options, because in the redirect URL you're sending the access token in the hash of the redirect, so it's a bit more exposed and a bit more of a problem. So this is the way I actually choose if I'm doing single page applications. But most what you get out of the box is using the middle one. You're using OpenID Connect code flow with Pixie, and if you want to use the backend for front end pattern, you have to make some hacks. So Blazor should be pretty easy to build with cookies, but if you take the default templates, it comes with tokens always. This is something I always use a lot, like.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
of course, it's like we've always said for 20 years, right? You can never trust a client, and I mean, your JavaScript app is essentially a nice front end. But
Yeah.
your API is exposed. Your client ID, for example, is exposed, and for the most part, you doing it on your own, you doing it manually to go get a token and putting it in Postman or in curl to go make calls on your own is really no different than what your application's doing. Your application just happens to be prettier in how it does it, but essentially, I mean, there's no way that you can trust your user's browser by any stretch, be it because the user themselves is malicious or curious, or because they've got malware on the machine, they've got malware and malicious Chrome extensions or whatever. I mean, you really can't trust your front ends for anything.
Yeah.
They're good for nothing, except for looking good.
Yeah, the high performant.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to see where I am now. I'm getting lost. So we've discussed this public access tokens, private access tokens. You can validate with your AZP ACR claim. we've gone through that. I think that's enough. Then the client validation with the AZP claim. It's not really constrained tokens because you're actually just using the Azure App Registration ID to check if this application came from this Azure App Registration. But you can constrain it to the Azure App Registration. So I think it's really good. It's very flexible. So if you were to add 3 or 4 of these different app registrations, you could add them all in the same app registration, or you could add them into different app registration and allow this then. So another thing, what you can do with your access tokens is token decryption, and this is it's not really very important for security because the access token you can use anyway, but you cannot see the data within the application. So if you want to type sensitive data sent in the access token or the ID token, you can decrypt the tokens and you can hide them, and then you will not see what's inside the token even if you rob it, but you can still use the token. So token decryption has one little problem at the moment. It's supported by Microsoft Identity Web, but there's no rollovers at the moment, and I've implemented a new feature at the moment which will come in the next version where you have automatic rollover with Key Vault using token decryption. So I can show you a quick example of that now as well. I have a token decryption here somewhere. There. So it's pretty simple to implement this from a user perspective. Yeah, I have an API which requires encrypted tokens, and I have a server-end application again that will access this. So when I open up the app registration, I can just configure it using token decryption certificates, and I say for this API I want to use decryption, and if I send an API to this, it has to be decrypted. So it just started to show it. I have to stop the other one. I think I used the same port, so.
So what credentials does it use to connect to Key Vault?
So I'm using the Azure Identity Connect to Key Vault direct in my application.
Okay.
Let's see that here. This program, I think it's startup.
So the Azure Identity is part of the Azure SDKs for people that haven't used that one.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the new one. Actually, it comes in this package. So in my, actually, I have to show it here maybe. No, it's in the profiles, I think, isn't it? So, I forget where I do that. Somewhere I have to say, I have to set the profile, and then it uses the default profile for my Visual Studio. And if I'm inside Visual and if I'm inside Azure, it will use my identity, my service principal then.
Yep.
It's this package though. Where are we? No, it's part of the Microsoft Identity package, and it's one of the child packages that uses them. We should have the identity inside that. There it is there. Azure Identity is used for that. So this all comes with Microsoft Identity Web. So what happens here when I start these applications? Hopefully I have a breakpoint again.
Well, worst case scenario, you can always rerun it.
Yeah. It's interesting that the computers must run at the same time. Seem to use up. I need more power.
Are you wireless or wired connected to the network?
Wireless.
Wireless. Yeah, that's usually a problem. I had
But I have
to
a
switch
pretty
to
fast.
wired one as well.
Pretty good.
Audio is breaking out. Yeah, it's because Damien is using too many pixels and too many packets. It's fine. We'll come back once it's settled.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Damien for a minute? Uh-oh.
Hey, far away 009. Hello, back to you.
Oh.
How's everyone?
I think he's back. Is he back?
He's back. Okay.
I'm coming.
Hold your breath.
Oh wait, did you just plug in a hard line?
Are we there?
Yes, we are. We can hear you.
Hello.
We can hear you. Hello, hello.
So it's using too many internet connections because I'm actually connected. Oh, is that the wrong one? I'll stop it, kill it. So come on. I'd say I'm back now, am I?
I can hear you. We got your screen
Yeah, we
back.
can
We
hear
got you back. So you are back.
Ah, super.
Yeah, you're back.
So I'll get the screen back now. Do I have to move it or something, do I? Oh, Stephen sees me. Also, so the problem there was I don't seem to have enough band. It's strange, but what happens is I was trying to connect to Azure and get my decryption certificate.
Oh.
And then when it comes back, then I send the decryption certificate. Hello?
Yeah. You're still here.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Still here.
So when I get the decryption certificate, what happens is then I'll stop all these apps as well. I'll get some more performance. Maybe I can show it in Azure. So I have token encryption somewhere here. Where is it? Have to look at.
Different tenants. Oh, there you go. It's 6 from the bottom. Token lifetime. Oh, that was token lifetime.
I just want to see which one I'm using. What appropriate roles? So I'm using the tenant client 5.5. I'd say you have the same problem. After a while, you start losing tracks of which app registrations you use for which, is it?
Yeah. It's a common issue.
So, you're setting up a token. So, are you with me? Oh, this is awful slow now.
We're still with you. I mean, I can see and hear you.
Yes.
Okay, can you see my manifest now? So this is
Yes.
important. When you upload your certificates for token decryption, it's always incorrect because you upload it, and what happens is the encryption certificate here. Where is it now? I have to go look for it. It will be the value of verify, and you want the value of encrypt. I don't see it here. Am I in the wrong client? Device permissions. I must be in the wrong client. Oh yeah, I have the token encryption key is next set here. I have to go to the other one. Oh, but if I go to the other one, it's token encryption web app. Oh, that's the roles. Web app user app. I get all confused there. So let's have a look. Token decryption there. It's using the FDC client. It's in the wrong client. So FDC was it there? Oh, that's DC API. So if you look at the tokens, you evolve, and it will upload that as type verify if it ever. This is crazy. So I see I have 2 certificates here, and these 2 certificates were uploaded to SAR files. So what you do is you go to your key vault to create a new certificate, and then you download the public part for the certificate, and then you can upload it here. And then you'll get automatic rollover eventually from your certificates. And if you go to the manifest then, so come on.
So when
So in the
when
manifest
when
here,
the kids
you
get
can see my
rolled
certificates, and for the
when the certificates roll over the keys,
Say it again?
does your app registration get updated as well?
yeah, because I'm only using the ID, the value. Actually, I have to check that. That's a good question.
Because if you
Maybe it
upload the
doesn't get
public
updated.
key,
I've never actually done a rollover yet
yeah,
because I'm using the public key from the certificate, so it should work. It's been supported now anyway, so I have to see what happens later.
yeah,
but-
I'd be curious to see how that works.
It's one thing that's important though is when you're doing encryption, you have to use the value encrypt, and you have to set this manual after the upload. This will be always incorrect. Normally, when you upload, it's going to be verify, so you have to go to your file and set the encrypt value. Okay, so Sahil, I always use RS256, and I use a big one if possible, but for encryption I use 265. Any other questions that Stephen's back? I I could just see the questions here. Yeah, okay. H3 Tech is giving me some hints how to improve my screen sharing. Don't know what it is. So another thing is that the token lifespan. Maybe this one I can start. This should not need. So in Azure AD, you need there's things called policies where you can set the token lifespan of your access tokens. So what you do is you can use the Microsoft Graph API to adjust tokens of the lifespan of your tokens if possible. So what I do is actually I create an application, and in this application here I use Microsoft Graph API, and there's three access rights you need. You need policy read all, policy read write application configuration, and applications read write all for the applications. And then with these three scopes, I can set the lifespan of my access tokens, version 2 access tokens. So what I've done in this application, this is also on GitHub. I can start it maybe, hopefully it will start. So what I can do with this one is
Can you also do a zoom in, like one zoom, if you don't mind?
Yep. So. So these three policies, the whole Graph API does nothing else except just set the policy. So the policy read all and the policy read write app configuration is what I can use to set the token lifetime policies. So this application should be started now. This is crazy. My demos are full.
While that's loading up, I know in B2C we've got rolling refresh, we've got rolling window sizes. What do we have? What do we have in Azure AD for these policies?
I don't know that. Do you know that, Chris?
Oh wow.
Nope.
Yeah, it's cruising, isn't it?
What? 1.4 or 1.3
Yeah, but what's it doing?
I don't know. Is it all Chrome?
Chrome. It's the sharing that's doing
wow.
all. The streams is going through Chrome.
I'm surprised it's that bad.
Otherwise, we're using nothing.
It's always Chrome.
This is the stream share we use. Ah, there we are.
Okay, good.
Woohoo! So what I've done is here I've got Azure AD policies. So you can see this here now. What I have is in Azure AD you can create access token lifetime policies, and then you can apply this to the whole Azure AD tenant, or you can apply it to certain Azure app registrations, or you can get an MS. Oh, that's cool. That's okay. So what happened there was I use in-memory token cache.
Token cache.
And the tokens cache is invalid, but my cookies are good. So I have to re-log in. That's why you should always use a persistent cache. So what I'm logging in now. It goes to Azure. I should be already logged in. This usually is super fast with me, so this streaming client is robbing all my bandwidth.
Yeah.
So there we are. We have a token, get access to this for user. We go on. Come on. So now we're logged in, and now you can see the policies. So I have two different policies here. I have a token access policy for 30 minutes and one is 7.5 hours. The default is 1 hour, but it's actually 1 hour and 5 minutes in Azure AD. So what happens is then, if I say I'm using a single page application, so I'd like to reduce that to 20 minutes or 15 minutes, which would be, it's always plus 5 minutes, whatever you say. And then I say I want to apply this policy to some of my applications, so I can add it here. I don't need the breakpoint. We'll get rid of that. Good one. So now I see this is the policy I'm using. It's a 30-minute access token policy, the access token lifetime policy, and I've applied it to these 3 applications. So I could assign it to a different application now. And you can only assign this to multi-tenant or single-tenant applications. So when I open it up, I can choose one, and I say I'd like to give maybe the DC portal this policy, and that means every single access token I create for this Azure app registration will be 30 minutes plus the 5 minutes. So if I was to start this up again, except my computer's too slow now, I'd be able to see that this policy is applied here. Bad request, I clicked it too many times. I'm getting impatient waiting for each call is a Microsoft Graph API call.
Yep.
And then the Graph API calls is getting the same bandwidth problems. We'll try it again. This is patient. Oh, it's already added. So you see the DC portal has this policy applied now. So any tokens I create now for this Azure app registration, the DC portal, will be now 35 minutes long because I've set the policy to 30 minutes here.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I want, I can create a new policy. I can update this one. And all it does is it's a simple UI for implementing policy management in your Azure app registrations. This is also on GitHub if you want to download it now. So, thing is, this will only work with multi-tenants or single tenants. I've never tried it with B2C. I've only ever done Azure AD. So, but I'm assuming that the policy thing is the same, and it only works for V2 tokens. The V1 tokens you can't set the lifespan. And this is pretty much the same as on the documentation, that if you were using the PowerShell scripts, you can do the same thing with the policies. So with this, then I can set global policies or single policies for every single Azure app registration I want. So if I'm doing single page applications, I'd make that go down to 15 minutes maybe. And then for the backends, an hour is okay because that's my trusted backend.
Yeah,
so
B2C has its own token lifetime management, so you can set that all, and it's all dealt with via the portal in B2C. So I don't think these policies would apply, although they could be getting generated under the hood. But the way that B2C issues tokens, I don't think these would apply there. So there's pretty flexible token lifetime stuff though in B2C. So
yeah. And then it's really simple. So here's assign a policy to application. All you do is you use the Graph API client, and then you say I'd like to get all the applications with this app ID, and then I set the policy here. I apply this token lifetime policy to it, and I have to include the token lifetime. It's really simple to use. So with
cool.
Graph API, you have access to pretty much everything.
Yeah. Well, I was doing some work yesterday with the Graph SDK, because Christos always gives me a hard time because I don't normally use the SDK. But I was doing some work with it yesterday, and it was much better. It was faster for me because I had to do so many graph calls, because we're taking B2C, we're taking app roles and pushing them into B2C. So it's a bunch of graph calls to make that happen.
Sold. I'm done for the year. I must convince JP to use the Graph SDK after 12 months working together.
Well, so I was using it yesterday, and I think one of the things that was interesting though was sort of like it's very very different than what I was used to. Like there's just I don't know. Like I always felt like I was doing it incorrectly. In terms of like,
so it's not the SDK, it's a JP problem. I like it.
I mean, it's always been a me problem. So this isn't anything new. What's up? Something's up with my mic. I guess now people can't hear me. That might not be a
and
bad
my camera.
thing, however.
It's an interesting day. Yeah, people can't hear you.
Not sure that's a bad thing. Let me try this a little bit. Maybe
that's better.
Maybe?
That's better. It's coming in louder. I don't know what's wrong with my camera.
Turn this one all the way up. I don't know. It's kind of weird. The kids were in here yesterday. I wonder if somebody got a hold of my microphone.
Did they change what's it called? The
gain.
The gain.
Yeah, they could have. Anyway,
And a lot of background noise says.
We'll try to get it sorted. Well, you know, it is what it is. We'll get it fixed after. We'll get it fixed before Friday. How about that?
We will move JP to solitary confinement where there's no external sounds.
I'm already in a basement. I mean, I can't get much further than that. But anyway.
Well, remember what we discussed with Michael last week? You could get into a bunker.
Oh, that's right. They want me to build a bunker, so that'll be interesting. Anyway, my point was that I like the Graph client. Like after having used it a little bit now, but I do find it a bit strange to use because I just never really know what's going to happen. And every sample in the documentation uses me, and I'm like, I don't need me. I need other people, you know. So like the indexing by ID on certain collections and things like that was just very
yes,
yeah, just very difficult. So anyway, sorry, continue, sir. Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, that's great.
To derail you there.
So I had some other demos where I wanted to go into roles. I'll show this without starting them actually because every time I start the applications I use Azure, my bandwidth crashes. So the first step is there's so many different ways to implement authorization in Azure, and let's see how is that. The first way I start with it, there's different things. There's different type of ways there. You can use the built-in roles, the RBAC roles. You can use the Azure roles direct in your Azure app registrations, or you can use groups and connect them, or you can use RCL lists as well. So one of the first ways, and the easiest thing to do is if you're creating an application which needs its own specific Azure app roles, you can create these in the Azure app registrations, and then you can use them within your application, and they'll get added to your access tokens, which is pretty neat. But the disadvantage or whatever it is, it's specific for your Azure app registration. So if you were to delete the Azure app registration, which are pretty much you deleting the roles, and then if you're using the groups and all the things that connect to the roles, like I have a group X and I want to assign this role to those groups, you'll delete that as well. So with the Azure app registrations roles, it's good and it's bad, but it depends how you want to do your authorization. But I think it's really simple to use them because you get the roles added to your tokens, and then you can just validate them in the applications. So in the app itself, then it's really simple to use it. All you need to do is then you can create policies. I have simple policies which just says in the claims I want to validate that my roles has this value. That's one of the roles I created in my Azure app registration, or has this value with student or this value with admin. And then in the controllers, I can say if you want to use this authorization policy, you have to use this. You have to have the policy which fulfills this, or you have to have an access token which fulfills this policy and an access token which fulfills this policy. So it has to be both, and if both are good, you'll pass. It's always and. So it's really simple to implement this, and I can make complex or really complex log in my application, and it's really simple to connect that to the Azure world where I have the roles or the groups in my Azure AD tenant, or I could use the built-in roles again with, for example, if I'm using Azure Storage, that's V1, and that has access as user impersonation, and I could then use the built-in roles from that as well and connect into my application as well. But I would like to show it, but the thing is, I don't want to. I'm a bit scared of my internet now to go for it. So
that's okay. That's okay.
That's fine,
because we've got we've got 15 minutes left, and we've been promising for 3 days that we were going to tell everybody about our new project.
Oh, cool.
So
that's
we've got to do that anyway. So
So
but anyway, well,
we could
Damien,
try and finish up then.
Yeah. So thank you very, very much for and we've got a big project going on with roles and app roles anyway, so I suspect we're going to end up getting a whole lot deeper into them here on the show in the next few weeks. Like I've got we're going to build a role auth. We're basically we're going to take app roles and sort of ham fist them into B2C so that B2C makes a bunch of calls to go get the app roles when a user signs in. So it looks like it's an Azure AD app role token and all the administration is still the same, but it's going to be valid for B2C users. So that's what we're going to be working on. Anyway, but thank you so much for coming. This has been great. I certainly picked up a lot. We've had a lot of great comments in the chat too. So no, this has been super cool. Thank you for
Yes.
spending
And
your
have,
evening with us.
We have all your links
it's
as
cool.
well. We will publish the video on YouTube and we will include them there. And we will link to your apps as well because people found them extremely useful. They were like fantastic for showcasing flows and what have you. So this has been great.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming. So
Pretty
if you
cool,
want,
apart
feel
from
free.
the internet.
Well, it's okay. I mean, if there's anything we've learned in doing this just for the few months we have, it's that internet is it's impossible to find decent internet anywhere in the world. I'm fairly certain. So unless
Apart
it's
from
like
North Carolina, where you get one up, one down. And I hate
one up, one down I get one up, one down for $70. My parents, they can get 10 gigabit each way for $300 a month.
What? I would do that. Where do they live? I'm moving there.
45 minutes for me. I thought about moving back, but then I was like, I can't move back home. That'd be awful.
You should move back to your parents altogether.
No. I thought maybe I'll just lease my dad's basement as a data center. Anyway, okay.
That's a good idea for the stream.
So Damien, feel free to stick around if you want, or if you've got places to be, you're totally free to drop out too. Whatever you'd like to do,
Yeah.
we're fine either way. So Christos and I have been talking a lot. We've been talking a lot about which we do anyway, but one of the things that we would like to do that we feel be really useful for everybody is to build a VS Code extension for manipulating your Azure AD app registrations.
And more.
And a whole lot more. But to start, to make it easier if you're building apps to see you, Stephen Goss. Thanks for hanging out with us. Make it easier to build apps that use Azure AD. This is the announcement, Bolt. Yeah, we're here. We're finally going to get to it. So anyway, back over the summer, we started sort of prototyping it out a little bit, and it kind of worked okay, and it was all right, whatever. So the thank you, Robertables. I know we need to work on it. I've got my channel point bot ready. I just need to publish it. I know that AZ Wildfire would be furious with me if I said that because he's been asking for it. But anyway, so we built this.
You summoned him.
I know. So we built the VS Code. We built this VS Code extension just as kind of a proof of concept to see if it was even something we'd want to do, and then work got in the way and we had a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, so we got back up last week and we started talking about it. We thought, we've got a better plan now. We've got a better scope of what the kind of work that we want to do, and we thought this would be a great opportunity for people who want to. A great opportunity for people who A, want to learn more about open source, contributing to open source projects, that sort of thing, and B, want to help us build this extension. So I know for me, even simple stuff like adding a redirect URI to my application or to my Azure AD app registration, or like copying to get the client ID so I can paste it in my settings file or whatever. Even simple stuff like that would make my productivity go up dramatically. So we've got a repo. We're going to be publishing the repo today. That repo has sort of the stub code of the Azure AD extension in it for VS Code. It's going to be at the 425 Show GitHub organization or GitHub team, but we are absolutely looking for people who want to contribute and contribute in any way you can. Docs, code, whatever you'd like to do. We're going to put some issues out there, so there are going to be issues with new work and up for grabs, that sort of thing. We're really excited about it because I think it gets us something that we can use, it gets us something that you can use, and it's something that anybody can contribute to. So if you're interested in getting into open source, I mean, me personally, I haven't contributed to a ton of open source projects, so I am certainly not an open source aficionado in that sense. So I know for me, learning how to do pull requests and learning how to squash commits and do all that sort of stuff was usually pretty nerve-wracking because I had a bunch of people telling me I was doing it wrong, and it was just kind of miserable. So if you're interested in getting into open source and you want to contribute in a warm, welcoming environment with at least me, the other quasi-noob, Christos has done a bunch, so he's going to be sort of our Sherpa to make sure that we do things correctly. But so that's going to be the big announcement. We'll have more details on it on Friday, but be sure to join the Discord because that's where most of the commentary on it's going to go. Ooh, good, lunch is here. I'm so hungry. Oh my God, it's like 2 p.m. here. Thank you, my dear. I'm so hungry. Oh my god. Anyway, so join the Discord, AKMS425 Show Discord. Join, and we'll have more details on this project.
And in the comments below if you want to figure out how to connect with us. But it's gonna be a super exciting project. We got lots of plans. We're working towards the MVP. We want your help and support in making this project what actually something that you need and something that you can work with. We don't want to, impose our mentality on this one or our ideas. We want this to be a community project that everybody can find useful. So hang out for the announcement. I mean, we announced that there will be a release of the project soon, so everybody can start contributing. Yeah, everybody's hungry apparently.
It's that time of day. Like it's lunchtime for everybody.
Deltadas, he's saying he's hungry too, or she's hungry too, and everybody here hopefully can get some time to go and get a snack or whatever.
I kind of do need a Git boot camp.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a bunch of Git on my own with my own projects, and I've done Git with I've done Git on like larger projects where I really didn't have any choice of like this is what I have to use and these are the processes I have to follow. I think for me it's like contributing to new projects like on GitHub or whatever. That's where, especially when I was first starting, I got a lot of it was very overwhelming. Like, oh my god, I got to do all these things and make sure everything T's are crossed, I's are dotted, that sort of thing, and it was a little nerve-wracking. So, if you want to come and contribute to a project that doesn't have a bunch of onerous people breathing down your neck about why your commit message was more than 40 characters long, then feel free to come and contribute. So,
yes.
Anyway, BSD guy, that was my wife actually. She brought me lunch, which was very nice. I didn't expect it, so she knew I was hungry though. But thanks for watching today. Thank you so much, Damien. This has been awesome. We're gonna have to get you back soon, and we'll cover the rest of what you got.
Yes, that was fantastic.
Thanks.
In the interim, go follow Damien on Twitter. Half of the time, if you search for anything identity developer related, you're going to end up on his blog anyway. But we'll make sure there are links that get out to them. And the code that he showed today is out on GitHub as well. I know we've shared the links quite a few times. But hey, join the Discord. Send us email, 45show@microsoft.com. If you have any issues, questions, comments, personal attacks, whatever you'd like to send us, we'll read them. And we'll be back on Friday. And Friday we're going to get some code published, and we're going to have us another guest. So,
Indeed.
thanks for hanging with us.
Thank you, everyone.
And we'll see you then. Have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.